Okay, so the reality of climate change for I guess all countries, and we're talking about the UK in particular, is more climate volatility, I think is the important thing. So in simple terms, that means we're going to get wetter winters and drier summers. Is that a fairly accurate summary?
Yeah, but I've been looking at all the regional climate change projection for the UK, and so what we expect by 2070 is that a change in precipitation range between minus 45% to plus 5% in summer, and minus 3% to plus 39% in winter. So that's on average what we would expect between winter and drier. So you much more. Much greater seasonal cycle with much drier summer and wetter winter. But also what's more important as well than the quantity of water that is received between the two seasons is how the rainfall is going to be received during the season. And we also expect more intense rainfall in summer and winter, which means that even at the period when we will get more rainfall, is going to be intense rain, which is different than getting continuous rain for the water system. And also during all the season, we will have warmer temperature, and also in summer more heat waves as well, which means that it's like the consequence for the water and the drying environment might be even higher as well.
Okay, so again, sort of summarizing that for those involved in the water industry, it's going to mean more floods and in the winter particularly, and more droughts in the summer. And also compared, I mean, we're already fairly familiar with both those scenarios, but the intensity, as I think you alluded to there, so when it rains, it's really going to rain sort of short, sharp bursts. So these storm overflows, which everyone's talking about now, that's going to get worse. And in summer, we're going to get a drought where the temperatures are going to be hot and it's going to be super dry. And I guess that also, I'll finish with my question in a minute, but yeah, that also means runoff, because obviously if the ground's baked, then the rain won't go into the ground. It's more likely to run off and cause problems. Yeah. So yeah, it's more chaos, I guess, is how we can describe it.
But it's a bit like you say, is if we've got an increased quantity and intensity of the rainfall, but we obviously contribute to increase the likelihood of flood in winter, and a decreasing quantity of rainfall and warmer temperature and more heat wave in summer contribute to to favor the drought as well during the winter. So we will have to deal with two different hydrological extremes more regularly, but it's not always that systematic as well. We need to bear in mind that depending on the permeability of the ground, for instance, depending if we've got more vegetation or more man-made impermeable surface, or depending on the local relief, like heavy rainfall may or may not lead to flood. So similarly, if the soil is already saturated at the time of the heavy rainfall, or if it's been baked by the sun when it's really dry, it's also going to be more likely to produce flood. And then it's all going to depend on the kind of infrastructure and management of the water we will design in the coming years. So we're more likely to have hazard, but we will have a role to play in all of this, and depending what we do, we may be able to mitigate a bit more the risk than if we don't really think much about what we will do in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, in simplistic terms, it seems to be that, you know, if you get more water, more rain in the winter, less of it in summer, you sort of match them up together, and overall you don't have a problem. But I guess the complexities of water management, I mean, when all this flood water arrives, we can't capture it all and keep it for the summer. But I guess to a certain extent, you know, with building reservoirs, as we've seen reluctant to do, you can theoretically build some more holes in the ground to capture some of that rainfall. But just what is the complexity, if you like, of water management that prevents us just sort of saving all that heavy rain in winter and using it in the summer when we need it?
The thing is, like, we could think that if we receive more water in winter and then less water in summer, in the end overall everything gets balanced. But it's the whole system is a bit more complex, because what we are dealing with rain that will infiltrate the water system, and rain that we can store, and how long it's going to be stored and everything. So so if you want, if when we get more rain in the future, it's more intense rain, a large part of this rainfall is not going to infiltrate the ground and not going to be naturally stored in the groundwater. And so if it's not infiltrating the ground, it's very likely to be naturally evaporated with the wind during the storm and everything. So we lose a lot of the water when it's just runoff and it doesn't infiltrate the ground. We cannot really stock it. Similarly, a lot of the water that we will be able to stock during the winter is then going to be used for human activities during the winter, during the spring. It's also going to evaporate in the reservoir basin and in the dam, because we are storing them. And if we have a flood during this period, when we got like a good level of water during the winter, if the dam and the reservoir are not designed to absorb more water, we will have to release some of the water to avoid overflow. So we actually will be very likely to lose water that we should have not used, because of the kind of rainfall we are getting in winter, more heavy, so much harder to manage and to stock. And then we need also to bear in mind that whatever, so we probably can do things in winter and spring to try to avoid better the loss, but it also all gonna depend on what we're gonna do during the spring and summer after, because and what was gonna be the condition during the summer, because if we got heat waves that are much more intense, lasting much longer, that we have never seen, it's gonna be hard to stock the water and not for this water to be evaporated at this time. And also because when it's warmer during heat wave, also people use also more of the water. So we got the part that is evaporated and also the water use that is increasing during this period. So it makes the whole thing much harder. And so yeah, probably, in my opinion, I think what we need to focus on is on trying to develop new technology or infrastructure that help us, and new practice as well that help us avoiding the loss during the winter, and more practice also during the spring and summer, so we are more conscious of the situation and not use the water exactly the same way depending on the condition. I mean, in the UK, we very rarely have this kind of restriction and everything in summer. I've seen in France in the last couple of years, it's been like this. And before living in the UK, I was living in South Africa, and every year you had some kind of policy and everything that were in place to try to make sure that people will be able to use the water in the following months. So maybe in the future in the UK, this is the kind of thing that we'll have to deal with more often. And then I guess we can also, to avoid the loss during the winter, the water loss during the winter, we probably can design more sustainable drainage system in urban areas. So when it's raining in urban area, we are not wasting as much water as we do now. For agriculture and everything, there are new irrigation system and everything that are designed all the time with that could potentially be used to lose more water and water the plant more efficiently at the time of during heat wave and everything. There is also things to do around the reservoir basins and the dam, because a big problem we have with this kind of infrastructure now is that they are all designed based on observed statistics, so based on what we have seen, but what's coming is things that we have never seen, so they are not designed for this. So if we don't renovate the dam or or extend the reservoir basins, we are very likely in the future to lose lots of water because of to avoid overflowing and everything. And so there are things to do around this. So I guess many things to do in the coming years, and I think we need to start thinking about it now, because year after year it's becoming more important.
Yeah, and I mean, if money was no object and the will was there from all the interested parties, would technology alone, if you like, by completely upgrading, altering, innovating infrastructure, would we be able to capture much more of the flood water, store it, use it in summer when we need it? Or do you think alongside any such innovation and new infrastructure, we will need government to step in and have restrictions on usage? Do you think that's just inevitable, or can we engineer our way out of such a situation?
Well, yeah, it's hard to tell, because right now we don't have all the infrastructure that we need to really mitigate the impact of future events. We don't even exactly have studies that have been done to try to test what would be the sustainability of our infrastructure now against unprecedented events. That will be coming in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So it's hard to tell. I believe that we can do a lot to mitigate the impact of flood and drought right now, just by renovating some infrastructure, investing a bit more in the technology, and probably in changing some practices that are not really sustainable. For this, we need to identify which practices are more or less sustainable than others, and try to encourage people to change their practice. And probably, if we had more studies actually testing this, we also would be more likely to talk with the government and say, okay, this practice and this practice are more sustainable than this practice and this practice, and then the government would be in better place as well to try to move toward this direction, encouraging people to do things. Right now, I think it's even hard to ask the government to step in, because I don't really know if we have a lot of scientific evidence to really tell them which practice would have been more sustainable. We know that some practices now are not really sustainable, and some infrastructure need to be renovated. That's what we can actually ask them to step in for, if they can, because also many of these are owned by private companies too, so it's not always their own problem. And but yes, I think there are things they can probably help now, and things that they probably need more evidence for, or more communication with us, like hydrologists and climate scientists, to and other people also, that to really have more material to know what to encourage people to use and everything.
Okay, I mean, I think I first got involved in the water industry back in 1995, which we had a famous, I mean, 76 was a famous drought for us, but then 1995, we had a serious drought in the UK, and it was then one of the political parties led a campaign pointing out how much water the water companies leaked out of their pipes. So there was a big focus then, but I'm saying fast forward the clock 30 years later, and we're still talking about droughts, and obviously floods have sort of come along as well at the same time. So are you, I mean, surprised in a way that the UK waters, and maybe other countries as well, just haven't really addressed, what seems to be to a lot of us an obvious problem, and yet they're always just sort of like putting a sticking plaster on it, rather than actually saying, yeah, we've got a long-term serious problem and we need to innovate, we need to stop you all using, whatever it is, some policy, as opposed to, as I say, at the moment, it's just a bit sort of, oh dear, we've got an issue here, let's throw a bit of money here, throw it over here, and there's no coherent policy. Does that surprise you or not?
Well, as a climate scientist and an hydrologist, I am surprised that I think in many countries of the world are just starting to try to address this question, while the scientific community, been telling people for almost 40 years. And so I am surprised for this, but but yeah, we see that in the recent years, actually, all this dialogue has been progressing in the right direction. So hopefully, in the coming years, like everything goes better. And I think it's not true for every sector, but in the water sector, I think that things are going in the right direction. The private company and the government and the people are all like in a good environment to work together. Communications are efficient right now. So it's not true for every sector. I think for some sector it's more complicated. In the water sector, I think we are in a better place, but then so yeah, I'm surprised that we are only starting to deal with all of this, but at the same time we can see more dialogue in the recent years, and yeah, maybe I'm not surprised as well that about the fact that if you consider how much investment we will have to do and how much people may have to change their practice and everything, maybe it's hard to step in when you know the amount of work that have to be done.
I think most industry stakeholders understand now what the situation is,
Yeah.
and the need for an integrated approach to whether it's floods or droughts or climate change, water conservation, etc. So I suppose the question is what's stopping this happening in a meaningful way at the moment?
Yeah, but yeah, again, I believe we are in a good path, so things are progressing, and now we start actually thinking about climate change governance, where more water governance, but are sustainable with climate change. We try to link these two things more often now. It's surprising that we haven't done it in the precedent decade, but I think it's starting now. I think for me, two things that probably are slowing things down now is that even if the companies are aware and if the government are aware, there is like this economical situation that probably slow things down, where maybe we don't know if it's worth investing because we're not entirely sure if the problem in the future is going to be that a big deal. So but yeah, I can tell that yeah, it's the more we wait to try to innovate and or infrastructure and change practices, the more it may cost us in the future. And then maybe to speed the things up, maybe what we, as hydrologists and climate scientists, what we need to do is to work more directly with the private, the water agencies, like the water industry, the government and the government as well, to make sure that the communication we release about the future risk and everything is clearly understood by everybody. Trying to work also more toward experiment when we can test which practice, which infrastructure is more sustainable to add which kind of event, and different type of event that may happen in the future. Show them what could be the risk of all this unprecedented event more clearly that we have done so far, and also show them evidence of what could mitigate this impact in a sustainable way over the UK. I think even in terms of communication between the scientists, the private company, and the government, there are things to be done to make sure that they clearly understand what's the issue of this future unprecedented event, and how but also to present them evidence on what we could do to deal with this event in the future and to mitigate their impact. Because yeah, I believe at the moment they are slowed down by the fact that they know how much this will cost, and they don't know exactly what we really need to do to avoid and mitigate the risk. And if we can give them more evidence and give them clear instruction and indication of what could be done to really mitigate risk in some area, I guess after things could move much faster. but we will have to work more directly with them. And is also one reason that the climate change governance and all these discussions are only starting now. It's also because during the last 30, 40 years, like the scientists, the industry and the government, they never really work together. We all on our side.
And maybe just I mean, do you think also that, whether it's the UK government or governments more generally, are slightly reluctant to be too prescriptive? Because I think, speaking to yourself, obviously, President Macron has made an announcement about pensions, and although the UK, where we complain about things, but not to the level which you do, with respect to the French for that. But do you think that's part of the worry? Is, if they start telling people that you can only have so much water per day or whatever it is, that there'll be a serious backlash? So they're just slightly nervous of telling us what the future will probably be, because it's just not very popular to tell people things they don't want to hear.
Yeah, actually, so it's a good point about Macron, because he just made me think that apparently they've got no problem telling people what to do. so apparently it's not a problem for a lot of the government. But then it's not only it doesn't only belong to the government to actually do all of this as well. I think government can ask people to change practice, like they have done also during COVID. Was a good example on how the government can tell people to do some things to mitigate risk. Was a different risk, but they did, and people follow those, and we are now almost out of it, I would say. I think for the water risk, we are not in such extreme condition now. One day we may be, if we are not moving in the right direction in the next 5-10 years. I hope that we do never get to a point where in the UK we have to have really strict restriction about water. It would be quite weird considering what the weather in the UK. Usually we know that the water is here.
It's there's a storm going on outside the window right now. So.
But I do believe we'd never get to this. But it might be something that refrains them, but I don't know. I mean, recently most of the government showed that that's not the first thing they of concern. So and yeah, my country is the best example of it right now. I will. But at least I think this time, if one day we get to this, I hope that the people that are designing the development, these governments and governance, and telling people what to change their practice, I hope that it is designed with scientists and with scientists and with practitioners that have been doing this for a long time and actually can advise and give good advice on what should be restricted, what should not be restricted, and everything. Because I think if we were doing things right now and everything could probably be a problem, because I don't know if the people that will be creating this restriction and everything will create it in, I would say, in the smarter way, because like doing this while respecting the practice of people, respecting the culture of people, respecting and at lower cost as well, because it can at a cost that is acceptable for everybody as well, because it could also come to a thing when we tell people to change something and a lot of people can afford it. So we need to find ways that are equitable and sustainable for everybody. So I hope that if one day we get to this point when we've got restriction, we hope it will be designed with people that make sure it's equitable and sustainable.
And maybe just in finishing, are you an optimist or a pessimist? I mean, I think we've got to the stage where everyone accepts climate change is real and is going to happen, and the volatility that comes along with it. So are you optimistic, whether it be in the UK or more generally, that people are sufficiently aware of the problem and what needs to be done by when it's going to happen? Or do you, as you maybe hinted at once or twice in the conversation, just slightly worried that for understandable reasons, maybe people haven't quite yet got into action mode to sort out, we've had floods, we've had droughts, and what's actually going to be done about it? Yeah,
but I think by this, myself, I will say I am positive, because I do think we can do, and I'm trying to do things to make sure that we provide the right information to the right companies, to the government, to the practitioners themselves directly as well, so they know and are more aware of upcoming risk. So I'm positive in that sense, because myself I'm trying to make things moving in this direction. But I think talking to every like anybody in the street, we probably at the moment still have quite a mixed behavior of people. I probably now have quite a lot of people that recognize the impact of climate change, but don't really know what will exactly be the consequence of it, and maybe don't always understand what may need to be done and everything to mitigate this. And you got like some people that don't really think about it at all. And so yeah, I would say maybe three different ways people are thinking about it. People that are trying to work toward right now, people that are trying to work right now to develop and design things that might be more sustainable in the future, and people that are aware of it but don't really know what to do, and people that don't really know.
No, that's great. I mean, it's been lovely to chat to you. We covered a lot of ground, Sebastian. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.